A waitress? His mother shrieked. You're marrying a waitress? Cancel this wedding. I kept folding napkins. The door chimed. Isabella. The elderly man called out. I've been trying to reach you. The board approved, all 47 locations are officially yours now. His mother fainted when she learned that I wasn't just any waitress. I was about to become the owner of the second largest Italian restaurant chain in the Northeast, with a net worth that made her precious trust fund look like pocket change. But as I watched Margaret Pemberton Ashford crumple onto the imported marble floor of Bella Vista's main dining room, her Hermes purse scattering its contents across the pristine tiles, I couldn't help but think how perfectly this moment encapsulated everything wrong with my relationship with her son. The napkins I'd been folding, crisp white linen, each requiring 4 precise folds to achieve the rose shape that had become Bella Vista's signature, fluttered to the floor as I rushed to help her. Not because I particularly cared about Margaret's well-being, but because causing your future mother-in-law to crack her skull on Italian marble tends to complicate wedding planning. Don't touch me, she gasped, batting away my hands as her son James finally stopped gaping and knelt beside her. James, did you hear what that man said? All 47 locations? That's impossible. She's lying. This is some elaborate prank to humiliate our family. Salvatore Moretti, 83 years old and still commanding enough presence to fill a room, walked slowly toward us, his cane clicking against the floor with each measured step. He'd built Bella Vista from a single-family restaurant in Brooklyn to an empire spanning 3 states, and he looked at Margaret with the same expression he used when inspecting questionable produce, mild distaste mixed with professional assessment. Mrs. Pemberton Ashford, he said, his voice carrying the slight accent he'd never quite lost despite 60 years in America. I assure you, Isabella owns every share of Bella Vista as of, he checked his Rolex, 17 minutes ago. The lawyers just left. Perhaps you should sit down properly instead of sprawling on my floor. We have chairs for a reason. James helped his mother to her feet, his face a mixture of confusion and something that might have been relief. We'd been engaged for 6 months, together for 2 years, and in all that time, he'd never quite figured out how to bridge the gap between his mother's expectations and my reality. Harvard Business School hadn't prepared him for falling in love with someone who wore a uniform to work. Isabella, he said quietly, what's going on? What does Mr. Moretti mean? I looked at my fiancé, tall, handsome in that prep school way, with the kind of jaw that belonged on a yacht club billboard, and realized I'd kept this secret too long. But how do you tell someone that you're about to inherit a restaurant empire when they spent months defending you to their mother as just a waitress? When every family dinner has been peppered with Margaret's suggestions about more appropriate career paths, like real estate or charity work or, better yet, no work at all. Perhaps, Salvatore suggested, pulling out a chair with surprising gallantry, we should all sit. Isabella has a story to tell, and I have a feeling Mrs. Pemberton Ashford will need the support. The main dining room of Bella Vista was empty at 3 in the afternoon, that quiet lull between lunch service and dinner prep. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air and the shock still painted across Margaret's perfectly made-up face. She sat rigidly in her chair, her St. John suit as impeccable as her posture, watching me with the kind of suspicion usually reserved for art forgers and tax evaders. 2 years ago, I began, settling into my own chair with the ease of someone who'd spent countless hours in this room. I was finishing my MBA at Rutgers. I needed a job, any job, to pay for my mother's medical bills. Sal was hiring servers. Rutgers? Margaret interrupted, her voice sharp. You have an MBA? James shifted uncomfortably. Mom, I told you Isabella went to business school. You said she went to college. You never said. She stopped herself, lips pursing. Continue. I smiled, remembering that first day. I was terrible. Dropped 3 plates my first shift, mixed up orders, forgot to charge a table for their wine. Sal should have fired me on the spot. Instead, he asked me why someone with my education was applying for a waitressing job. Salvatore chuckled. She tried to lie, said she just liked the restaurant business. But I've been reading people for 60 years. I knew desperation when I saw it. My mother had cancer, I said simply. Good insurance from a corporate job would have taken too long. I needed money immediately. Sal hired me that day, paid me cash under the table for the first month while my paperwork went through, and gave me an advance for Mom's first treatment. Margaret's expression flickered, just for a moment, before hardening again. That's very touching, but it doesn't explain. I'm getting there, I interrupted, earning a raised eyebrow. Margaret Pemberton Ashford was not used to being interrupted, especially by the help. Sal started noticing things. Like how I reorganized the scheduling system to reduce labor costs by 12%. Or how I negotiated better rates with our linen supplier. Small things, at first. She has a gift, Salvatore said, pride evident in his voice. I built this business with sweat and intuition. Isabella sees patterns, inefficiencies, opportunities. Within 6 months, she was managing 3 locations. Within a year, she was essentially running operations for the entire chain while still wearing a server's uniform. Why? James asked, and I could hear the hurt in his voice. Why didn't you tell me? I met his eyes, seeing the man I'd fallen in love with, not the Pemberton Ashford heir, but the guy who'd spent 3 hours helping me repaint my apartment, who brought me coffee during late shifts, who'd stood up to his mother repeatedly, even if unsuccessfully. Because you were already fighting so hard to defend the waitress you fell in love with. How could I tell you I wasn't really that person? That I was playing a role while secretly running a multi-million-dollar operation? Multi-million? Margaret's voice went up an octave. Salvatore pulled out his phone, scrolling to something before sliding it across the table. Last year's revenue. $47 million across all locations. Net profit of $8.3 million. Isabella implemented new systems that increased our margins by 30% while maintaining quality. She also identified 2 underperforming locations that we converted to ghost kitchens for delivery only, tripling their revenue. I watched Margaret's face as she processed the numbers. She came from old money, the kind that multiplied quietly in trust funds and real estate holdings. But she understood business, had to maintain her position on various charity boards and social committees. The number on that screen was respectable by anyone's standards. But she's still just an employee, Margaret said, grasping for something to diminish the revelation. A well-paid manager, perhaps, but was an employee, Salvatore corrected. My wife Rosa and I never had children. We have nieces, nephews, but none with the head for business. None with the heart for it. When Rosa died last year, I knew it was time. He looked at me with grandfatherly affection. Isabella held my hand at the funeral. She'd worked a double shift but still stood beside me when we buried the love of my life. That's when I decided. Decided what? James asked, though the answer was obvious. To leave it all to her. Every restaurant, every recipe, every square inch of real estate. The lawyers have been working on it for months. We kept it quiet, Isabella insisted, said she didn't want anything to change until it was final. He smiled at me. Always thinking of others, this one. Worried the staff would treat her differently if they knew. Margaret stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is absurd. You can't just hand over a $47 million business to a what, mother? James stood too, and I saw something in him I'd rarely seen before, genuine anger. To a waitress? To someone who actually worked for success instead of inheriting it? To the woman I love? Don't be naive, James. This changes everything. If she's been lying about this, what else has she hidden? What kind of person pretends to be poor when they're actually— I never pretended to be poor, I said quietly. I was poor. Working 3 jobs poor. Choosing between rent and my mother's medication poor. The fact that Sal trusted me with his life's work doesn't change where I came from. 3 jobs. James turned to me. You never mentioned 3 jobs. Bella Vista was the main one. I also did bookkeeping for a dental practice and taught night classes at the community college. Business finance, ironically. I shrugged. I stopped the other 2 about 8 months ago when Sal increased my responsibilities here. Didn't seem relevant to mention. Margaret laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Didn't seem relevant? You're engaged to my son and you didn't think your actual career was relevant? What career? I stood now too, facing her across the table. The one where I served pasta to demanding customers who complained if their bread wasn't warm enough? The one where I cleaned tables and rolled silverware and went home with aching feet? That's the job your son fell in love with me doing. That's the person he proposed to, not some restaurant empire heiress. Don't you dare. Margaret. Salvatore's voice cut through her building tirade. Sit down. There's more. She sat, probably out of shock more than obedience. Salvatore rarely used that tone, the one that had built a business from nothing, that had survived competition and recessions and changing neighborhoods. It was the voice of someone who'd earned his authority rather than inherited it. Tell her about the offer, he said to me. I sighed. This was the part I'd been dreading, the decision I'd been putting off. 6 months ago, Olive Garden's parent company approached us. They wanted to buy Bella Vista. All locations, all recipes, all branding. They offered. I paused, watching Margaret's face. $72 million. James sat down hard. 72? Isabella, that's— I know what it is. I met his eyes. It's financial security forever. It's never worrying about money again. It's the kind of wealth your mother would find acceptable. And— Margaret leaned forward despite herself. What did you do? She turned them down, Salvatore said with evident pride. Didn't even counter. Just said no. Why? Margaret and James asked in unison, then looked at each other in surprise. I walked to the window, looking out at the street where I'd first seen the help wanted sign 2 years ago. Because Bella Vista isn't just a business. It's Sal and Rosa's legacy. It's jobs for 400 people who depend on us. It's recipes that Rosa's grandmother brought from Sicily that have been feeding families for generations. You can't put a price on that. Apparently you can, Margaret said dryly. $72 million. No. I turned back to face them. That's what someone else thinks it's worth. To me, it's worth the look on a regular customer's face when they bite into Rosa's tiramisu. It's worth keeping Antonio as head chef even though he's getting older and slower, because he's been here for 30 years. It's worth knowing that we pay our staff a living wage and provide health insurance and cut corners on ingredients to boost profits. Salvatore stood, moving to join me at the window. This is why I chose her. Not because she's brilliant with numbers, though she is. Not because she works harder than anyone I've ever met, though she does. But because she understands that some things matter more than money. That's a lovely sentiment, Margaret said, but sentiment doesn't pay bills. No, I agreed. But $8.3 million in annual profit does. And that's with responsible practices and fair wages. Imagine what we could do if we were willing to compromise our values. But we're not. I'm not. James stood again, walking over to me. He touched my face gently, his expression unreadable. Isabella Rodriguez, MBA. Restaurant empire owner. Worth approximately. He glanced at his mother. What would you say, Mom? The business valued at $72 million, she owns it outright, no debt according to Mr. Moretti. That makes her worth more than us, Margaret finished quietly. The Pemberton Ashford Trust is worth $45 million, most of it tied up in real estate and conservative investments. The room fell silent. I could hear the kitchen staff beginning dinner prep, the familiar sounds of chopping and sizzling that had become the soundtrack of my life. Margaret sat at the table like a general who, just realized she'd been fighting the wrong war. You could have told us, she said finally. When I said those things about your job, your prospects. You could have defended yourself. With what? I asked. Hey, Margaret, I know you think I'm not good enough for your son, but surprise. I'm secretly rich? That would have gone over well. It would have been the truth. The truth is that I was a waitress when James met me. The truth is that I served him chicken parmesan on our first date because he came here alone after we matched on a dating app, too nervous to ask me out directly. The truth is that I fell in love with him when he insisted on helping the busboys clear tables during a rush, even in his $1,000 suit. I looked at James. The truth is that I was terrified telling you about the inheritance would change everything. And look, I was right. Isabella, James started, but his mother interrupted. What are your plans? She asked, and for the first time, her voice held genuine curiosity rather than disdain. For the business, I mean. Expansion? Franchising? You could triple your value in 5 years with the right strategy. I almost laughed. Of course Margaret would pivot to business strategy. It was safer than emotions, cleaner than admitting she'd been wrong. I have plans. A culinary scholarship program for underprivileged kids. Converting more locations to sustainable practices. Maybe opening a few new sites, but only if we can maintain quality. That's it? She seemed genuinely perplexed. You're handed a $70 million opportunity and you want to give out scholarships? I want to build something that matters. Something that lasts. Something Rosa would be proud of. Salvatore squeezed my shoulder. She is proud, Cara. I know she is. James hadn't moved, hadn't spoken beyond my name. I could see him processing, recalibrating, trying to fit this new information into the image of the woman he proposed to 3 months ago in this very restaurant after hours with only the candles on table 12 lighting the room. I need some air, he said finally, heading for the door. James. Margaret called after him, but he was already gone. I stared at the door, feeling my heart sink. This was what I'd feared, why I'd kept the secret. Not that he'd be angry about the money, but that he'd realize he didn't really know me at all. He'll be back, Salvatore said quietly. That boy loves you. He just needs to think. Does he? I asked. Or does he love the simple waitress who needed him to defend her? Who made him feel like a hero standing up to his mother? What happens now that I don't need defending? Margaret stood, gathering her purse with shaking hands. What happens, she said slowly, is that you become my daughter-in-law. If you'll still have us, after everything. I stared at her, sure I'd misheard. I'm sorry. She straightened her jacket, a nervous gesture I'd seen James do 100 times. I owe you an apology. Several, actually. I judged you based on your job without bothering to know you. I said cruel things, thought cruel things. I was prepared to boycott my own son's wedding rather than accept you. She met my eyes. I was wrong. Not because you have money, that's irrelevant. But because James loves you, and you clearly love him, and you've shown more character in keeping this secret to protect others than I've shown in my entire privileged life, Margaret. Mrs. Pemberton Ashford, she corrected, then actually smiled. Until the wedding. Then you can call me Mom, if you'd like. Though I understand if you'd prefer Margaret. Or nothing at all. I haven't exactly earned the right to familiarity. The door chimed again, and James walked back in. His hair was mussed from the October wind, his cheeks pink. He looked at his mother, at Salvatore, and finally at me. I have questions, he said. I'd be worried if you didn't, I replied. Were you ever going to tell me? I considered lying, making up some story about waiting for the right time. But we'd had enough deception. I don't know. Maybe after the wedding. Maybe never. I liked being your Isabella the waitress. I was afraid Isabella the owner would be different somehow. She is different, he said, and my heart sank. Then he continued, she's more incredible than I imagined. Do you know what I've been doing out there? Thinking about every time you came home exhausted, every double shift you worked, every time my mother said something awful and you just smiled and let it go. You weren't just surviving, you were running an empire. And you still made time for me, for us, for my family's ridiculous demands. James. I'm not finished. He walked closer. I also thought about that night last month when you were calculating something on a napkin and told me it was your schedule. But it wasn't, was it? You were probably figuring out profit margins or supply chain logistics or God knows what else. Seasonal menu pricing, actually, I admitted. We were switching to autumn vegetables and I needed to recalculate food costs. He laughed, the sound filling the room. Of course you were. My brilliant, secretive, empire-running fiancé. Who serves tables and folds napkins and somehow finds time to revolutionize a restaurant chain. So you're not upset? Upset? He pulled me into his arms, right there in front of his mother and Salvatore. Isabella, I'm in awe. Also a little terrified. Do you know what this means? What? I'm marrying the boss. Literally. You're going to be infinitely more successful than me. My mother will have to brag about her daughter-in-law the restaurant magnate instead of her son the investment banker. I don't mind, Margaret said, and we all turned to look at her. Bragging about you, I mean. I think I'll enjoy it, actually. Oh, you've eaten at Bella Vista? My daughter-in-law owns the entire chain. Yes, she's quite remarkable. Salvatore clapped his hands once, the sound echoing. Good. Now that's settled, we celebrate. Isabella, go to the kitchen and tell Antonio we need the good champagne. The Cristal I've been saving. Sal, that's your anniversary champagne. And what better occasion? Today, I pass my legacy to someone who understands its true value. Today, the Pemberton Ashfords learn what kind of woman their son is marrying. Today, Isabella Rodriguez stops hiding and starts owning who she is. He winked. Besides, Rosa would haunt me if I didn't celebrate properly. As I headed to the kitchen, James caught my hand. For the record, he said quietly, I fell in love with you that first night when you recommended the osso buco instead of the lobster ravioli because you said it had more heart. You were right then, and you're right now. Some things can't be measured in dollars. Your mother seems to be adjusting well to the idea, I noted, glancing back at Margaret, who was actually listening to Salvatore's story about the original Brooklyn location. She respects success, James said. But more than that, she respects people who earn it. You've earned everything, Isabella. The restaurants, the respect, and yes, even her approval. Though that last one shouldn't matter. But it does, I admitted. Not because I need it, but because you love her. She's your family. Our family, he corrected. And speaking of family, when do I meet your mother? The one you've been supporting through cancer treatment while running a restaurant empire. I smiled. Sunday dinner. Fair warning, she doesn't know about the inheritance either. She thinks I'm still just a waitress who's marrying a nice boy from Manhattan. Why haven't you told her? Because she's proud of her daughter the waitress. She tells everyone at the cancer center about how hard I work, how I never miss a shift, how I'm proof that immigrants' children can make something of themselves in America. I shrugged. I'll tell her Sunday. Maybe. Or maybe I'll wait until she's stronger. James kissed my forehead. You protect everyone, don't you? Your staff by keeping wages fair, Salvatore's legacy by turning down millions, your mother's pride by keeping quiet, even my dignity by not revealing you could buy and sell my trust fund. That's what you do for people you love, I said simply. Antonio appeared in the kitchen doorway, holding the Cristal and looking confused. Isabella? Mr. Moretti says we're celebrating? But it's not his anniversary. No, I said, taking the champagne. It's better. Today's the day I stop pretending to be less than I am. Today's the day the Pemberton Ashfords learned that sometimes the best things come in waitress uniforms. And today's the day Bella Vista officially becomes mine. Yours? Antonio's eyes widened. But that means? That means everything stays the same, except I sign your paychecks now instead of Sal. Oh, and we're implementing that healthcare upgrade you suggested. Full dental and vision for all employees. Antonio's eyes filled with tears. He'd been worried, I realized. They all had. What would happen when Salvatore retired? Would the new owners care about them the way he did? Tell the others, I said gently. Tell them their jobs are safe, their benefits are increasing, and nothing changes except for the better. As Antonio hurried back to spread the news, I heard the first exclamations of joy from the kitchen. By the time I returned to the dining room with the champagne and glasses, the entire staff had started filtering in, servers, cooks, bussers, even the dishwashers. Word spread fast in a restaurant. Ah, Salvatore said, seeing the gathering crowd. Good. Everyone should hear this. He raised his glass once I'd poured the champagne, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. My friends, my family, for that's what you are. Today, I officially hand Bella Vista to Isabella Rodriguez. Not because she's earned it, though she has. Not because she deserves it, though she does. But because she understands what Rosa and I always knew, that a restaurant isn't about food or profit. It's about family. It's about community. It's about taking care of each other. The cheer that went up could probably be heard in Brooklyn. Staff members surged forward, hugging me, crying, laughing. These people who'd become my second family over 2 years. Who'd taught me their languages, Spanish, Italian, Mandarin from our surprising number of Chinese-Italian fusion experiments, who'd covered my shifts when mom was in chemo, who'd kept my secrets when corporate executives came sniffing around. Through the crowd, I saw Margaret standing awkwardly to the side, clutching her champagne flute like a lifeline. I made my way over to her. Overwhelming, isn't it? I said. She nodded, watching the celebration. I've been to 1,000 society parties, charity galas, exclusive events. I've never seen joy like this. That's because those events are about being seen. This is about belonging. I touched her arm gently. You could belong too, if you wanted. We serve an excellent Sunday sauce. James loves the meatballs. Her eyes misted, Margaret Pemberton Ashford, who I'd never seen show emotion beyond disdain or approval. I'd like that. I'd like to know the woman my son loves. The real one. This is the real one, I said. Restaurant owner, yes. But also the girl who still folds napkins when she's nervous. Who knows every regular customer's order, who dreams in Italian food pairings. The money doesn't change that. No, she agreed. But it does make you the most eligible bride in Manhattan. Do you realize what you've done? Every society mother who turned up her nose at you will be desperately trying to get invitations to the wedding now, I grinned. Good thing we're getting married here then. Limited seating. We'll have to be very selective about the guest list. Margaret actually laughed, a real laugh, not the polite titter she usually employed. Oh, I like you. I'm sorry it took all this for me to see it. But I like you very much. James appeared at my side, slipping his arm around my waist. So, boss lady, what's the first official decision of the Rodriguez restaurant era? I looked around the room, at Salvatore telling stories to a rapt audience, at my staff toasting each other, at Margaret actually smiling at one of Antonio's jokes, at the late afternoon sun painting everything golden. This morning, I'd been a waitress folding napkins, worried about my future mother-in-law's disdain. Now I owned it all, the restaurant, the legacy, the responsibility. First decision? I said. We celebrate. Then tomorrow, we get back to work. Because owning 47 restaurants is a lot harder than waiting tables in one. Spoken like a true CEO, James said. Spoken like someone who's been doing the job for 2 years, I corrected. The only difference is now everyone knows it. As the celebration continued around us, I thought about the strange path that had led me here. From desperate MBA graduate to waitress to shadow CEO to official owner. From the woman Margaret thought wasn't good enough to the one she was already planning to brag about. From keeping secrets to revealing truths. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. Mija, are you working late again? Save some energy for Sunday dinner. I want to hear all about wedding planning. I smiled, typing back. Not working late, Mom. Just celebrating with the family. I have some news to share on Sunday. Good news? I looked at James, who was now helping Salvatore distribute champagne to the kitchen staff. At Margaret, who was actually asking our hostess about her grandchildren. At the restaurant that was now mine to protect and grow. The best news, I replied. The kind that changes everything and nothing all at once. Because that was the truth. Tomorrow, I'd still be here, still checking on customers, still making sure the bread was warm enough and the sauce was perfect. The only difference was that now everyone would know why, not because I had to, but because I chose to. Because this was my family, my legacy, my heart. And no amount of money could change that. As the sun set over Manhattan painting Bella Vista in shades of gold and amber, I raised my own glass in a silent toast to Rosa Moretti. To my mother fighting cancer with grace, to all the women who'd been dismissed as just anything. We were never just anything. We were everything, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the world to notice. Today, they'd noticed. Tomorrow, we'd show them what we could really do.